Across this module, we connected the four worlds inside your company into a clean loop. Then, we learned to cross company lines with controlled exchange. And now I want to show you the payoff, the thing that makes all these integrations work worth it, beyond just tidier systems. Here's what almost nobody tells you about the compliance in regulated industries. Most companies treat audit evidence as a separate, painful project. They build the project over here, and then, before an audit, they scramble to produce a mountain of documentation proving they did it right over there. Two efforts, twice the work. And the evidence is always a little bit fictional and reconstructed after the fact. This episode shows you the alternative. When your systems are properly connected, the evidence generates itself as a byproduct of work flowing correctly. Evidence as exhaust, not as a separate project.
Digital transformation time. Digital transformation time.
As always, two promises. If you're a founder, you'll stop seeing compliance as a cost center that slows you down. You'll start seeing audit readiness as something you can get almost for free if your operating model is right. If you're a tech lead, you'll understand how to design your connected systems so the evidence trail is automatic. So an audit becomes a query, not a fire drill. I built a digital environment behind a real aviation design organization approval with a tiny team. And the only reason that was possible is this. We made the evidence fall out of the work instead of stuffing an army to produce it separately. That's the trick I want to give you. There are two completely different ways to be compliant. They feel similar from the outside, but they're worlds apart in cost and risk. The first is the bolt-on model, the common one. You do your engineering work in your systems. Compliance is a separate activity. And before an audit, a quality team goes around collecting all the evidence, screenshotting approvals, compiling spreadsheets, reconstructing who decided what and when. The evidence is assembled after the fact to satisfy the auditor. It's expensive, it needs dedicated people, it's slow, it's stressful. And worst of all, it's fragile. Because evidence reconstructed months later is partly archaeology and partly fiction. And in a small company, you simply can't afford the army that model assumes. But there is a second, which is the byproduct model. Here, evidence isn't collected, it's emitted. Every time work flows correctly through your connected systems, it leaves a trail automatically. A requirement is linked to a design. A change goes through the closed loop and records its own approval and timestamp. A baseline is frozen. A build executed in MES against that baseline. Nobody creates evidence. The evidence is just the honest record of work that already happened, captured as it happened. When the auditor arrives, you don't scramble, you query. The trail is already there because the system produced it as exhaust while doing its real job. Same compliance, same outcome. One model needs a department and produces fiction. The other needs a well-connected operating model and produces truth. The difference between them isn't how hard you people work. It's whether your systems are connected so the evidence has somewhere to accumulate. And why can't every company just do the byproduct model? Because it depends entirely on the integration work we did in this module. Evidence as exhaust only works if the trail is connected. Let me show you why. Compliance, at its core, asks one kind of question. Show me that this requirement was met. Trace it from the requirement, through the design, the change history, the build to the proof. That question crosses every boundary we talked about: ALM to PLM to ERP to MES. If those worlds aren't connected, if they're islands, then answering it means a human manually stitching the trail back together across disconnected systems. That's the bolt-on army. But if they're connected in the loop we built in episode 1 of this module, the trail already spans the boundaries. The auditor's question becomes a walk along a thread that already exists. Remember the loop from episode 3.1: requirements to design, to business, to execution, and back. Picture it now with evidence accumulating at every link as workflows. The requirement to design link emits traceability. The change process emits approval records. The baseline emits a frozen reference. The MES execution emits proof of build. The same connections that make your operation efficient also make it self-documenting. That's the deep reason integration is worth the effort. It pays you twice, once in speed, once in evidence. Most people only ever see the first payment. There is a serious work behind this idea. The most relevant reference is recent research of assurance case-centric engineering, Wei and colleagues, in work they call Access. The core idea is exactly what we're describing. Your assurance case is your structured argument that the system is safe and correct. And it can be linked directly to the actual engineering artifacts and evaluated continuously as you build, rather than assembled at the end as a separate document. In plain terms, the proof is wired into the work and stays live instead of being written up afterwards as a story. That's the academic backbone of evidence as a byproduct. What I'm adding is the startup-sized version. You don't need a research platform. You need your four worlds connected so the trail is real and continuous. The principle is the same at any scale. Link the evidence to the work and keep it live. So, how do you design your connected systems so evidence falls out for free? 5 principles. None of them need a big team. They need you to decide this up front instead of bolting it on later. 1. Capture evidence at the moment of work, never after. When a decision is made, it's recorded then with its owner and timestamp as part of doing the work, not reconstructed later. This is the closed loop from Module 2 doing double duty. The same discipline that controls change also emits the approval record. If you ever find yourself gathering evidence as a separate task, that's the bolt-on model creeping back. Evidence should be a side effect, never a chore. 2. Link, don't copy. Evidence is only trustworthy if points to the live connected truth, not to a copied snapshot that can drift. When the requirement, the change, and the build are linked, the trail is self-consistent by construction. When they're copied into a compliance folder, you're back to reconstructed fiction. The links are the evidence. 3. Design the trail to be walkable in both directions. An auditor asks forwards the requirements, show me it was built and verified, and backwards, the part, why does it exist, what requirement justifies it. If your integration supports tracing both ways across the boundaries, any audit question becomes a query. This is the requirements traceability idea from the module 2, now spanning your whole connected loop. And 4. One source of truth per fact. The single ownership rule from Elia in this module. Evidence collapses the moment two systems disagree about the same fact, because now the auditor has caught you with two truths. Clean ownership isn't just tidy architecture. It's what makes your evidence credible. Contradiction is the fastest way to fail an audit, and duplicate ownership manufactures contradiction. And 5. Every meaningful object carries its own status and approval. A document, a baseline, a build record, it knows what it is and whether it's approved. This is the same discipline we needed for cross-org exchange in the last episode. And it means the evidence is self-describing. The auditor doesn't have to ask, is this the approved version? The object answers for itself. Let me ground this in something real, because it's easy to dismiss as theory. In a hydrogen electric aviation company, we had to operate as a certified design organization to earn what's called design organization approval from the aviation regulator. That approval is not granted for ambition or for paperwork. It's granted only if you can demonstrate one thing, that you operate in a controlled, repeatable, evidence-backed way. And we earned it with a tiny core team, which is only possible under the byproduct model. We didn't have an army to reconstruct evidence before audits. We had a connected environment where the evidence was a byproduct of how work already flowed. The digital environment and governance weren't a supporting act bolted on around the edges of certification. They were treated as an integral part of how the design organization operated. That's the whole thesis of this course validated by a regulator. Get the connected operating model right, and a small team can achieve what's supposed to do require a large one. Founder takeaway. Compliance is not a tax you pay separately at the end. In a properly connected operation, audit readiness is a byproduct of working correctly, which means you can be lean and certifiable at the same time. Stop budgeting for compliance as a dedicated army bolted on before audits. Start investing the money in the connected operating model, the one that emits evidence for free. One produces stress and fiction, the other produces a permanent, queryable truth. For a small company in a regulated market, this is the difference between certification being impossible and being routine. TechLead's takeaway: design for evidence from day one. Every connection you build should ask two things. Not just, does this move the right data, but does this leave a trustworthy trail? Capture at the moment. Link, don't copy. Keep the trail walkable both ways. One source per fact. Status travels with the object. Do that, and when the audit comes, you don't assemble anything. You run a query. You become the person who turned compliance from a fire drill into a side effect. That's a rare and valuable thing to be. And that closes Module 3. Pull it together. Integration is not connecting everything. It's a clean loop of high-value links inside your company with single ownership and deliberate boundaries. Across company lines, it's controlled exchange through a defined gate. Never direct access to internals. And when you get both right, you earn the prize. Compliance evidence as a byproduct of work flowing correctly instead of a separate, fragile, expensive project. Connected worlds, clean boundaries, self-documenting work. That's an operating model where a small team can move fast and prove everything, which is the entire promise of this course. Recap. There are two ways to be compliant. Bolt on, where you reconstruct evidence after the fact with an army, and byproduct, where the evidence is emitted as work flows through connected systems. The byproduct model is only possible because of integration. The same connections that make you fast make you self-documenting. Integrations pays twice. Design for it with 5 principles. capture at the moment, link don't copy, walkable both ways, one source per fact, and status travels with the object. A regulator approved a tiny team design organization on exactly this basis, so it's not theory. If this reframed compliance for you, subscribe. We keep building the operating model piece by piece. And in the comments, when your next audit comes, will you be assembling evidence or running a query? That honest answer tells you which model you're really on.
Digital transformation time. Digital transformation time.